The most expensive mistake in the room wasn't on the screen. It was assuming the waitress knew nothing. No one noticed Maya Brooks when she entered the executive conference hall that morning. That was normal. In places like this, people remembered the billionaires, the investors, and the speakers standing beneath bright lights. They didn't remember the woman carrying coffee. The ballroom of the Grand Lexington Hotel shimmered with wealth. Crystal chandeliers reflected across polished marble floors. A 40-foot digital screen dominated the front of the room, displaying charts, forecasts, and projections tied to a deal worth nearly $1 billion. Every seat was filled with people who controlled companies, investment funds, and fortunes larger than most Americans could imagine. At the center of it all sat William Carter. At 46, the billionaire founder of Carter Capital had built a reputation for seeing opportunities before anyone else. His decisions moved markets. His approval could transform a startup into a household name overnight. Today was supposed to be another victory. The company presenting had spent months preparing for this moment. Their CEO stood confidently on stage, moving through slides filled with impressive numbers and ambitious growth projections. Around the room, heads nodded in approval. Pens moved across notebooks. Phones displayed messages confirming what everyone already believed. The deal was practically done. Maya quietly refilled water glasses near the back wall. She kept her eyes down, moving with the calm efficiency that came from years of being invisible. Yet as she passed one of the side screens, something caught her attention. A single number. Just one. She slowed her steps. The presenter advanced to the next slide, but Maya's eyes remained fixed on the previous figure. Her stomach tightened. She looked again, then again. The room continued applauding another optimistic projection, while Maya felt a strange chill spread through her chest. It wasn't a typo. It wasn't a formatting issue. It was something deeper, something that changed everything. Her grip tightened around the silver coffee tray. The presenter smiled as another chart appeared. Investors exchanged approving glances. William Carter leaned back comfortably in his chair. Then Maya saw the supporting calculation that confirmed her fear. The number wasn't just wrong. The entire valuation depended on it. Her hand trembled. The tray slipped. The sharp sound echoed across the ballroom as cups rattled against polished metal. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. In the sudden silence, Maya stared at the screen and whispered words that would soon change the course of the entire day. That number is wrong. Maya immediately wished she could take the words back. Hundreds of eyes turned toward her. The silence felt heavier than the crystal chandeliers hanging above the ballroom. For a brief second, no one moved. Then a few people exchanged amused smiles. Someone near the front chuckled. Another investor shook his head and returned to his notes. To them, it was obvious. A waitress had confused confidence with expertise. The presenter on stage forced a polite smile. "I am sorry," he said. "Was there a problem?" Maya felt heat rise to her face. She could feel every gaze in the room measuring her uniform, her tray, her place. Years ago, she might have stepped back immediately. Years ago, she might have apologized and disappeared. But the number on that screen would not leave her mind. It sat there like a warning bell that nobody else seemed to hear. "The growth rate," she said quietly. "It does not match the projected revenue." A few laughs spread across the room. Not cruel, not loud, just enough to remind her exactly who belonged in the ballroom and who did not. The presenter adjusted his tie and smiled again. "Thank you for your concern. I think our accounting team has it covered." More laughter followed. Maya lowered her eyes. She should have walked away. That would have been easier. Instead, she glanced back at the screen. The formula was still there, hidden beneath colorful charts and polished graphics. Wrong. Completely wrong. At the center table, William Carter watched her carefully. Unlike the others, he was not laughing. His expression remained unreadable. Years of building companies had taught him something valuable. Confidence meant very little. Conviction meant everything. The young woman looked embarrassed. She looked out of place. But she did not look uncertain. There was a difference. The room gradually returned to normal. Conversations resumed. The presenter clicked to another slide. Investors nodded once again. The deal continued moving forward. Yet William found himself watching Maya instead of the presentation. She did not leave. She stood quietly near the service station, holding the tray against her chest. Not defensive, not angry, just troubled, as though she had seen something she wished she had never seen. The billionaire leaned forward slightly. "Wait." His voice cut through the room without effort. The conversation stopped instantly. The presenter froze. Every head turned toward William Carter. He slowly looked from the stage to Maya. "You said the number is wrong." Maya swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." "Are you certain?" The question hung in the air. Most people would have retreated. Most people would have apologized and escaped. Maya did neither. She met his eyes. "Yes, sir." The ballroom grew quiet again. William studied her for several seconds. Then he glanced toward the screen. Something had shifted behind his calm expression. Not belief. Not yet. Curiosity. And curiosity had built his fortune. Finally, he leaned back in his chair and spoke words that surprised everyone in the room. "You have 60 seconds. A ripple of confusion spread through the audience. William's gaze never left Maya. 60 seconds to explain why every expert in this room might be wrong. Maya felt every eye in the ballroom settle on her. 60 seconds. That was all she had. Not 60 minutes. Not a detailed review. Just 1 minute standing between her and complete humiliation. The presenter folded his arms confidently. Several investors leaned back in their chairs, already expecting the moment to end badly for her. Maya placed the coffee tray on a nearby table and slowly approached the giant screen. Her black uniform looked strangely out of place among tailored suits worth thousands of dollars. Yet as she walked forward, something changed. The nervous waitress disappeared. A different side of her emerged. Calm, focused, certain. She stopped beside the screen and pointed toward the revenue forecast. "This number assumes annual growth of 38%. She said. "But the customer acquisition data supports closer to 22%. The presenter smiled politely. "That is because our expansion model includes new regional markets." Maya nodded. "I know." The room grew slightly quieter. "The problem is that the projected revenue already includes those markets. They are being counted twice." A few heads lifted. The presenter immediately clicked to another slide. "You are misunderstanding the calculation." Maya did not move. "Then show the operating assumptions." The presenter hesitated, only for a second, but William Carter noticed. So did several investors. Maya continued. "The revenue chart looks impressive because the duplicated growth factor inflates the valuation." One investor frowned and began typing into a spreadsheet on his laptop. Another opened the financial packet distributed earlier that morning. The presenter cleared his throat. "With respect, I do not think this discussion is productive." Maya looked directly at him. "Then it should be easy to prove me wrong." The room became still. William rested his chin against his hand. His expression remained calm, but his attention had sharpened. He had seen this before. Not the waitress, not the conference room, the hesitation, the small cracks that appeared when someone lost control of a narrative. Maya pointed toward another line item. "Your projected earnings jump dramatically in year 3. "Yes," the presenter replied, "because of efficiency improvements." Maya nodded again. "Except the labor costs do not reflect the additional workforce required to support that expansion." This time nobody laughed. The investor who had been checking numbers stopped typing and slowly looked up. Another whispered something to the person beside him. The presenter clicked through several slides quickly. Too quickly. Maya noticed. William noticed too. The confidence that had filled the room 30 minutes earlier was beginning to fade. The presenter suddenly looked less like a visionary, entrepreneur, and more like someone trying to stay ahead of uncomfortable questions. Maya took a slow breath. She had expected resistance. She had not expected the numbers to unravel this easily. That realization troubled her more than anything else. Because if she could spot multiple problems in under a minute, What else might be hidden beneath the surface? Then her eyes landed on a section near the bottom of a financial statement projected briefly onto the screen. A small footnote, barely visible. Most people would never have noticed it. Maya felt her pulse quicken. The duplicated growth projections were serious. But this was different. This was bigger. Much bigger. And for the first time since she stepped forward, William Carter saw genuine concern appear in her eyes. Maya stared at the tiny footnote projected near the bottom corner of the screen. Most people in the ballroom could not even read it from where they sat. But she could. And what she saw made the earlier mistakes look insignificant. The room remained silent as she stepped closer to the display. The presenter shifted uneasily. For the first time that morning, his confidence seemed forced. "There is another issue," Maya said quietly. Her voice was calm, but the words landed heavily. Several investors exchanged glances. One of them closed his laptop and focused entirely on her. William Carter remained motionless, watching every detail. "What issue?" he asked. Maya pointed toward the footnote. "This debt obligation." The presenter immediately responded. "That is a standard financing arrangement." Maya nodded slowly. "That is what the summary says." She paused. "But that is not what the footnote says." A murmur spread across the room. The presenter clicked quickly to another slide. Maya noticed the movement. So did William. "Go back," William said. The presenter hesitated. "Mr. Carter, the detail is not relevant to the overall growth strategy." William's voice remained calm. "Go back." The slide returned. Maya kept her eyes on the footnote. "This obligation matures in 18 months. She looked around the room. "And the repayment amount is significantly larger than what appears in the executive summary." Several investors immediately began reviewing the printed reports in front of them. One adjusted his glasses and frowned. Another started flipping pages faster. The room no longer felt like a celebration. Felt like an audit. The presenter attempted a smile. "The liability is fully manageable." Maya did not argue. She simply pointed to another figure. "Then why is it excluded from the adjusted valuation model?" Nobody laughed this time. Nobody even moved. William slowly leaned forward. "Answer her." The presenter swallowed. "Because the refinancing process is already underway." Maya's eyes narrowed slightly. "Approved." The presenter remained silent. "Signed." Silence again. A chill moved through the ballroom. Investors who had been preparing congratulatory messages only minutes earlier were now studying every line of the financial package. One of them suddenly looked up. "There is no executed refinancing agreement attached." Another investor quickly added, "I do not see one either." The presenter opened his mouth, then closed it. Maya felt her stomach tighten. She had hoped she was wrong. She had wanted the explanation to be simple. But every answer seemed to reveal another question. William Carter glanced toward the legal advisor sitting beside him. The attorney was already reviewing documents with growing concern. The billionaire's expression darkened. Not with anger, with realization. The room had spent hours discussing market opportunities, future growth, and ambitious expansion plans. Yet a waitress carrying coffee had uncovered more critical information in minutes than an entire room of experts had noticed all morning. Maya lowered her hand and stepped back from the screen. She had said enough. The numbers could speak for themselves now. But as the investors continued examining the documents, William found himself asking a different question. Not about the company. Not about the debt. Not about the deal. His eyes followed Maya as she quietly returned toward the service station. Who was she? Because no ordinary waitress could walk into a billion-dollar meeting and see what everyone else had missed. The ballroom no longer sounded the same. Earlier, it had been filled with confidence, quiet conversations, and the certainty that a historic deal was about to be completed. Now the air felt different, heavier, uncertain. Investors who had arrived expecting to celebrate were suddenly reviewing documents line by line. Laptops remained open. Calculators appeared. Legal advisors whispered to one another. The polished presentation that had seemed flawless less than an hour ago was beginning to crack. Maya returned to the service station and picked up a fresh pitcher of water. Her hands were steady, but her thoughts were not. She had never intended for any of this to happen. She had only seen a number that did not make sense. Then another. Then another. She quietly continued her work, refilling glasses as though nothing unusual had happened. Yet every few seconds she could feel people looking at her. Not as a waitress anymore. As a question they could not answer. Across the room, William Carter remained focused on the financial documents spread across the table. The more his team investigated, the worse the situation appeared. One analyst leaned closer and pointed toward a section buried deep in the report. Another highlighted inconsistencies between projected revenue and disclosed obligations. What had started as a small correction was becoming something much larger. William listened without interrupting. Years of experience had taught him that problems rarely traveled alone. When one appeared, others often followed. The presenter stood near the stage, attempting to regain control of the room. He answered questions quickly, sometimes too quickly. Every explanation seemed to create new concerns. Every clarification raised another doubt. The confidence that had carried him through the morning was fading. Investors noticed. William noticed. Maya noticed. A senior investor finally pushed his chair back and sighed. "I want a complete review before any commitments are made." Several others immediately agreed. The momentum behind the deal was slowing. Fast. The presenter glanced toward William, hoping for support. Instead, he found the billionaire studying a completely different document. Silence stretched across the ballroom. Then William spoke. "Pause all signing activity." The words landed like a stone in still water. Nobody argued. Nobody protested. Assistants stopped preparing paperwork. Legal teams closed folders that had been ready for signatures. The room understood exactly what had happened. The deal was no longer moving forward. Not today. William slowly looked across the ballroom until his eyes found Maya again. She was helping an elderly guest refill a coffee cup. Nothing about her behavior suggested she had just changed the course of a transaction worth hundreds of millions of dollars. She simply smiled politely and continued working. That unsettled him more than anything else. Most people would have demanded recognition. Most people would have enjoyed the attention. Maya seemed uncomfortable with it. As the meeting gradually dissolved into smaller conversations, William called one of his senior associates. "Find out who she is." The associate nodded. "You mean the waitress?" William kept his eyes on Maya. "No," he said quietly. "I mean the woman who understood our numbers better than half the people in this room." The ballroom slowly emptied, but the questions remained. Investors gathered in small circles, speaking in lowered voices. Legal teams packed their briefcases. Assistants rushed between tables carrying updated reports. Yet one subject dominated every conversation. Not the failed presentation. Not the delayed deal. Maya Brooks. She continued working as though nothing extraordinary had happened. She collected empty glasses, organized trays, and thanked guests for attending. The contrast was almost surreal. Minutes earlier, she had identified problems that experienced analysts had missed. Now she was folding napkins beside a service cart. William Carter watched from across the room. The image stayed with him. In his world, talent announced itself. Degrees hung on walls. Accomplishments appeared in headlines. Expertise came wrapped in titles and offices. Maya fit none of those categories. And yet she had seen what everyone else overlooked. An hour later, William's associate returned carrying a tablet. "I found her employee profile," he said quietly. William looked up. "And there is almost nothing unusual." William frowned. "Nothing?" The associate shook his head. "Part-time waitress. 3 years at the hotel. Excellent performance reviews. No disciplinary issues. No executive background. No consulting history." William stared at the screen. Something did not add up. "Keep looking." The associate hesitated. "There is one thing." William waited. "Her education records stop unexpectedly." "Meaning?" She attended one of the most competitive business programs in the state. William's eyes narrowed. Attended, not graduated. The associate scrolled through additional information. Top grades, academic awards, faculty recommendations. He paused. Then she disappeared from the program. William sat back slowly. The missing piece was beginning to appear. Not complete, not clear, but visible. Across the ballroom, Maya was preparing the final coffee station for cleanup when the hotel manager approached. His expression looked unusually nervous. "Maya," he said softly, "Mr. Carter would like to speak with you." Her hands stopped moving. Around them, several employees immediately looked over. Maya felt a knot form in her stomach. She had spent years avoiding attention. Now it seemed impossible. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked. The manager blinked. "Wrong." He almost laughed. "No. I do not think that is the problem." Maya glanced toward William. The billionaire stood near the windows overlooking the city skyline. The late afternoon sun painted golden reflections across the glass towers outside. For a moment she considered declining, returning to work, finishing her shift, pretending none of this had happened. But some moments refused to be ignored. Slowly, she walked across the ballroom. William noticed her approaching and set aside the documents in his hand. Neither spoke immediately. The city stretched behind him. The nearly completed deal rested abandoned on the table beside him. Finally, William broke the silence. "You knew exactly where to look." Maya lowered her eyes briefly. "I noticed a few things." William shook his head. "No. You saw things people spend entire careers learning to see." For the first time all day, Maya did not have an answer. And for the first time all day, William Carter was not looking at her as a waitress. He was looking at her as a mystery he intended to understand. Maya looked out the window before answering. The city below moved with its usual rhythm. Yellow taxis crossed intersections. Office towers reflected the fading sunlight. Somewhere beyond the glass, millions of people were finishing ordinary days. Yet her own day no longer felt ordinary. "I used to study finance," she said quietly. William nodded. That much he already knew. "Your records show more than that." Maya remained silent. "Top of your class," William continued. "Scholarships, academic awards, professors who expected you to build a remarkable career." She smiled faintly. "Professors are often optimistic." "And then?" William asked. Maya folded her hands together. The question sounded simple. The answer was not. Life happened. For several seconds, neither spoke. The ballroom had nearly emptied now. Cleaning crews moved quietly in the distance. Glasses clinked softly. The excitement of the morning felt very far away. "You left the program 1 semester before graduation," William said. "Why?" Maya looked toward the floor. She had spent years avoiding this conversation. Years avoiding the looks that followed whenever people learned what she had given up. "My mother became sick." William listened. "The treatments were expensive. My younger brother was still in high school. Someone had to work." Her voice remained calm, but there was a weight behind every word. "At first I thought I could do both. Classes during the day, work at night." She smiled sadly. "I was wrong." William understood more than he expected. Not because their lives were similar. They were not. But because he recognized sacrifice when he saw it. "So you left." Maya nodded. 1 semester became 1 year. 1 year became several. She shrugged gently. "Eventually people stop asking when you are going back." Silence returned. William studied her carefully. There was no bitterness in her voice. No self-pity. Only acceptance. Somehow that impressed him even more. Most people carried disappointment like a wound. Maya carried hers like a fact. Quiet, invisible, yet impossible to ignore once seen. "Do you miss it?" he asked. For the first time, her answer came immediately. "Every day." The honesty surprised even her. William looked down at the abandoned deal documents resting on the table. Hundreds of millions of dollars. Endless negotiations. entire teams of analysts. Yet the person who had protected him from a disastrous investment had been serving coffee 10 feet away. The irony was almost unbelievable. His phone vibrated. A message from his legal team appeared on the screen. Preliminary review confirms significant undisclosed financial exposure. Further investigation recommended. William stared at the message. Maya had been right. Not partially right. Completely right. He slowly locked the phone and slipped it back into his pocket. Then he asked a question neither of them expected. If you miss it every day, why did you stop looking for a way back? Maya looked at him, genuinely caught off guard. She opened her mouth to answer, then stopped, because for the first time in years, she realized she did not actually know. For a long moment, Maya could not answer. William's question lingered between them, simple on the surface yet impossible to ignore. Why had she stopped looking for a way back? She turned toward the massive windows again. The city lights were beginning to appear one by one as daylight faded. Years ago, she would have answered immediately. Responsibility, bills, family, survival. Those had always been the reasons. Yet standing there now, they suddenly felt incomplete. I think, she said slowly, after enough time passes, you stop seeing a dream as something delayed. You start seeing it as something finished. William remained silent. Maya continued. At first I told myself I would return the next semester. Then the semester after that. Then next year. She smiled faintly. Eventually it became easier not to think about it. The billionaire understood that answer better than she realized. Not because he had abandoned dreams. Because he had watched countless talented people do exactly that. Life rarely destroyed ambition overnight. More often, it buried it. Beneath practical decisions made one day at a time. His phone vibrated again. Another update from his legal team. Additional review confirms material discrepancies. Recommendation: terminate negotiations immediately. William read the message and slipped the phone away. The deal was finished. There would be no signing ceremony. No celebration. No billion-dollar headlines tomorrow morning. Yet strangely, that no longer felt like the most important thing that had happened today. Maya noticed the expression on his face. Bad news? She asked. William shook his head. Expensive news. That earned the smallest laugh from her. The first genuine laugh of the day. I suppose there is a difference. There is, William replied. Bad news hurts. Expensive news teaches. The conversation paused. Around them, hotel staff continued cleaning the ballroom. Chairs were stacked. Tables were cleared. The room that had hosted some of the most influential investors in the country was slowly returning to an ordinary event space. Maya watched the transformation. One more event ending. One more shift nearly complete. One more day that would have looked exactly like every other day if she had ignored that number on the screen. William suddenly asked, Do your coworkers know? Maya frowned. Know what? How much you understand? She shook her head. Most people do not ask. The answer struck him harder than she intended. Most people do not ask. It explained far more than any resume ever could. People saw a uniform and stopped looking. They saw a job title and assumed they knew the whole story. They never asked what came before. They never asked what had been sacrificed. They never asked what was hidden beneath the surface. William looked at Maya differently now. Not with curiosity alone. With respect. Real respect. The kind that could not be purchased or negotiated. And as the final guests disappeared through the ballroom doors, he realized something unexpected. The smartest investment opportunity he had encountered all year was not the company that had stood on that stage. It was the woman everyone had overlooked while she carried coffee through the room. The last members of the cleaning crew were finishing their work when William made his decision. He had spent his entire career evaluating risk, identifying potential, and investing in people who could create extraordinary results. Yet few moments had ever felt as clear as this one. Maya stood beside the service station organizing the final stack of coffee cups. The ballroom was almost empty now. The giant screen had gone dark. The abandoned deal documents sat untouched on the conference table. A day that had begun with certainty had ended with revelation. William walked toward her. His footsteps echoed softly across the polished floor. Maya looked up as he approached. "Your shift is almost over?" he asked. She nodded. "About 15 minutes. William glanced around the room. "Good." Maya waited. The billionaire was not a man known for wasting words. "I have a question." She smiled slightly. "Another one?" For the first time all evening, William smiled back. "Probably several, but I will start with one." He paused. "If someone offered you a way back into finance, what would you do?" Maya stared at him. For a moment she thought she had misunderstood. "A way back?" William nodded. "A real opportunity. Not charity. Not a favor. An opportunity earned through ability." The room felt strangely quiet. Maya looked down at the cup in her hands. Years earlier, she would have answered immediately. Now the question felt almost unreal. "I would be terrified," she admitted honestly. William laughed softly. "That is probably the most intelligent answer you could give." Maya looked up. "Why?" "Because people who know nothing are rarely afraid. The people who understand the challenge usually are." He reached into his jacket and removed a business card. Simple, elegant, expensive. He placed it on the table between them. "Come to my office Monday morning." Maya blinked. "For what?" William's expression became serious again. "To prove that today was not luck." She stared at the card. Her heart began beating faster. Not because of the opportunity, because of what it represented. A door she had convinced herself no longer existed. William turned toward the windows one final time. Beyond the glass, the city. Lights stretched endlessly into the distance. Then he looked back at Maya. "The deal today could have cost me hundreds of millions of dollars." His voice remained calm. "But the bigger mistake would have been walking out of this room without recognizing talent when I saw it." Maya looked at the card again. The same hands that had spent the day carrying coffee now held the possibility of an entirely different future. And as the lights dimmed across the ballroom, she realized something important. The moment that changed her life was not when she found the mistake. It was when someone finally saw her.